Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into a story I think everyone knows on some level, Anne Frank. Her diary, it's this incredibly powerful symbol of, well, of humanity during the Holocaust.
It really is a personal window into hiding. But tragically, that hiding didn't last. They were found, captured.
And that capture, how they were found, that's become this enduring mystery, hasn't it? For decades, people have asked,
Mhm.
was it betrayal, an informer, or something else?
Exactly. That's the question. How did the Nazis find the secret annex?
Right. So that's our mission in this deep dive. We're going to look at the facts, what the historical record actually tells us. We'll explore the different theories that people suspected over the years.
And crucially, why it's been so hard to find a definitive answer. It's complex.
It really is. Think of this as your shortcut to getting properly informed on this specific, very tangled historical puzzle.
Hmm.
What we know, and maybe more importantly, what we don't know for sure.
Okay, so to set the scene properly, Anne Frank, German-born Jewish girl, her family fled Germany in 33, ended up in Amsterdam.
Trying to escape Nazi persecution.
Right. But then the Netherlands was occupied. Life became impossible. So by July 1942, the family goes into hiding in that famous secret annex.
Above her father's business, wasn't it? Behind a bookcase?
That's the one, a very cramped space. And for 2 years, that was their entire world. Anne kept her diary, documenting everything, her thoughts, fears, the day-to-day reality.
An incredible record.
Yeah.
But it all ended on August 4th, 1944.
That morning, yeah, German police raided the building, the Grünpolizei, the uniformed police, often used for these kinds of raids.
And they were led by an SS officer.
Yes, SS Oberscharführer Karl Silberbauer, a non-commissioned SS officer.
We also know Dutch officers were involved. Gesines Gringhus and Willem Grutendorst. That was confirmed later, right?
Correct. Their presence was documented. So everyone in the annex, the Franks, the Van Pels family, Fritz Pfeffer, arrested.
What happened immediately after?
They were taken to the RHSA headquarters, the German security police place, for interrogation, held overnight. Then moved to the Huis van Bewering, which is like a house of detention in Amsterdam, and then eventually to a transit camp before deportation.
And there's a really grim detail here our research highlights.
Yeah.
Because they were caught hiding.
Ah, yes, this is critical. They weren't just seen as Jews for deportation. The Nazi system classified them as criminals for the act of hiding.
Even the children.
Even the children. And this meant, tragically, when they arrived at the camps, they were sent straight to the punishment blocks. Hard labor.
Awful. And we know the outcome. Anne and her sister Margot died at Bergen-Belsen just weeks before liberation.
Their mother Edith at Auschwitz. Only Otto Frank, the father, survived.
And he was the one who eventually published the diary, dedicated his life to it.
He did, ensuring her voice wasn't silenced.
So let's go back to that August morning, the raid. For years, the main theory, the one Otto Frank himself strongly believed, was betrayal. Someone tipped them off.
Yeah, that was the prevailing idea. And it largely came from Karl Silberbauer, the SS officer who led the raid.
What did he say?
Years later, when he was tracked down by Nazi hunters, he claimed the raid happened because of an anonymous telephone tip they received that morning.
An anonymous call. But wasn't his story a bit inconsistent?
Well, yes. Our sources indicate it changed. Initially, he just said an anonymous Dutchman. But later on, he actually named someone.
Who?
Willem van Maren. He was a worker in the warehouse on the ground floor of the building.
Van Maren. And there was some suspicion around it already, right? From the helpers, maybe even the Franks.
There was. Definitely mistrust. Anne mentions a difficult warehouse worker in her diary could have been him. Otto Frank even filed a complaint against him after the war.
What came of it?
Dismissed. The investigators looked into it, but found, well, no actual evidence. No proof linking Van Manen to a betrayal. Just suspicion. And suspicion isn't enough.
Right. So the anonymous tip is the starting point, but the caller remains elusive. What about other leads? Didn't another officer, Detman, mention something about a woman making the call?
That claim exists, yes. Julius Detman. But here's another problem for historians. Detman died very shortly after liberation. So that detail about a woman caller, it was never corroborated. No other source backed it up. It makes it, well, unreliable information, unfortunately.
Okay, so Van Maren lacked evidence. Detman's claim is unverified. Who else was looked at? Tony Ehlers?
Ehlers, yes,
Yeah.
a Dutch National Socialist. He definitely had a problematic history with Otto Frank. There was some kind of extortion attempt early in the war, apparently.
So, bad blood there. Motive, perhaps.
You could argue motive, sure, a sour relationship. But again, and this is the recurring theme, our research is clear. Absolutely no concrete evidence connects Allers to the raid, and nothing solid in the historical record.
It's frustrating, isn't it? These leads that seem plausible but just dissolve under scrutiny. What about Lena Hartog? Melissa Mueller, Anne's biographer, suspected her.
Yes, Lena Hartog. She was the wife of another warehouse worker, different from Van Maren.
And the thinking there was,
Well, her husband worked in the building, knew people were hiding. He supposedly told Lena, and then Lena, allegedly, told a friend.
sounds like a possible chain of information.
It does. But the massive problem, again, is timing. When did these conversations happen?
Right. Did she know before the raid? Did she talk before the raid?
Exactly. Investigators could never pin down the dates. Did her husband tell her months before? Did she mention it to her friend long after the arrest? Without knowing when these things happened relative to August 4th, you can't establish a causal link. It's circumstantial, but too vague.
Okay. So another dead end, really.
Yeah.
Then there's Ance van Geek. That's a particularly dark possibility.
It is a very tragic figure. Ance van Geek was a Jewish woman arrested by the Gestapo. To save herself, she became an informant.
Kerning and other Jews.
Many, many other Qs, hundreds possibly. And she operated in Amsterdam, worked for the specific Gestapo unit that arrested the Franks, so it's possible.
Possible she betrayed the Franks, among others.
It's conceivable, yes. But again, no confirmed record, no document, no testimony that definitively says Ans van Dijk reported the people at Prinsengraaf 263. It remains a possibility, but unproven.
This pattern is just striking. So many names floated, so many theories, but always hitting that wall of no actual proof.
Absolutely, and it hasn't stopped. Even recent investigations, like these cold case style projects, they keep trying to find the answer.
Like that book in 2022, the one that named Arnold Vandenberg.
Right, Vandenberg. He was a prominent Jewish businessman, part of the Jewish Council in Amsterdam.
Those councils set up by the Nazis? A terrible situation.
A horrific position to be in. The accusation against Vandenberg was explosive, that he gave up the Franks' hiding place to save his own family.
A devastating claim.
But
The evidence.
that's the crucial point our sources stress. The book that made the claim, it provided no evidence, zero historical proof to back it up.
Wow. So just an accusation, really.
An accusation without substantiation. It really shows how strong that desire is to find someone responsible, even if you have to make leaps without evidence.
Okay, so if all these betrayal leads, all these suspects, ultimately lack proof, what else could have happened? We're seeing a shift in thinking, aren't we? Especially from places like the Anne Frank house.
That's right. There's been a move towards considering other possibilities. Maybe it wasn't a deliberate, targeted betrayal of the people in hiding at all.
What kind of other possibility? Inadvertent discovery.
Exactly. Think about the context. The helpers, Mip Gies, Johannes Kleiman, Victor Kugler, Beb Voskiel, they were heroes, but to keep the family alive, they had to engage in illegal activities.
Like what?
Well, getting enough food meant using black market ration coupons, which was illegal. Victor Kugler, who ran the business downstairs, was apparently keeping some income off the books, basically tax evasion to help fund everything.
Right, necessary for survival under occupation, but still illegal.
Precisely. So the alternative theory is maybe the authorities weren't investigating hidden Jews initially. Maybe they were investigating illegal ration dealing or the financial irregularities at the Opekta company offices.
Ah, so a raid targeting those activities could have stumbled upon the annex purely by chance.
That's the idea. It's significant that two of the helpers, Kleiman and Kugler, were arrested that day. And the charges cited were related to economic crimes, violating rationing laws, not specifically for hiding Jews initially.
That actually makes a lot of sense as a possibility. It shifts the focus from a single villain to the dangerous circumstances themselves.
It does. It suggests the discovery might have been a tragic consequence of the general illegality forced upon people by the occupation, rather than a specific act of malice aimed at the Franks.
So when you pull all this together, what's the takeaway?
The clearest takeaway from all the research, all the investigations over 70-plus years, is, well, a lack of certainty. Despite numerous suspects, despite persistent theories, there is simply no definitive, concrete proof of a deliberate betrayal by any specific individual.
And with everyone directly involved now gone.
The exact reason why that police van pulled up on August 4th, 1944 is likely to remain unknown. One of history's painful, unresolved questions. We've seen accusation after accusation made, but solid evidence. Very, very little.
It's a real lesson in historical complexity, isn't it?
Yeah.
How the truth can be so elusive, resisting our need for simple answers, for clear blame.
It really is, and it forces you to be critical about information, especially when accusations fly without proof.
So we've looked at the raid, the enduring betrayal theory, the long list of suspects without proof, and this alternative idea of an accidental discovery linked to the helper's own risky activities.
And maybe, just maybe, the most important thing isn't to obsess solely over finding who it was, if indeed it was anyone specific.
What do you mean?
Well, perhaps the deeper, more vital focus should be on understanding the horrifying circumstances that force people like the Franks into hiding in the first place. The system of persecution, the occupation.
The conditions that made discovery and capture possible, regardless of the exact trigger.
Exactly. And focusing on our collective responsibility to remember, to understand those conditions, and to make sure they never, ever happen again.
That's a powerful thought to end on. Something for all of us to really consider.